Hello folks, Baltmatrix here, and today we're taking a look at two more figures from SirToys.com. Their names are going to magically appear here on screen for you. I'm not even going to try to pronounce them because I don't speak Chinese at all. Okay, so what do we have here? We have two lady robots. That's correct. Both of these figures transform into ladybots. First, we have this wonderful plane whose svelte sleekness is absolutely wonderful. It really reminds me of one of the character planes from Macross 7. Yeah. Forward swept wings, pink and lavender. Very, very nice. I like this figure a lot. It does have a front landing gear like this, though it doesn't hold together the best, I will admit. It still looks really cool. And it also reminds me of an anime called Yukukaze from a couple of years ago with a plane that had artificial intelligence in it. So it does remind me of multiple things. Next up we have this blue or cyan color six-wheeled armored car. This thing is so sweet. It's big, it's heavy, it's bulky, and it feels like it could run over anything. It also reminds me of the last... Oh, geez, what was the figure from Mask? M-A-S-K, the toy line, where it was a car that turned into a six-wheeled armored vehicle. I will have the name of that appear on screen as well, with a picture of it. I can't remember the name of it, but you know what I'm talking about. It kind of reminds me of that, and I half expect it to turn into a normal car, but it doesn't! It is just this awesome super tanker thing that rolls with no problem. Vroom. The plane, though, does not roll, doesn't have any moving wheels, but it does have a gun. Unfortunately, you can't really store the gun anywhere. I've thought about storing it up here, or maybe it could store like that. No, that's not going to work. And there's really nowhere to put it either, so that's a shame. And then the big blue one has a gun as well. This giant freaking gun that unfortunately can't be placed or stored anywhere underneath the vehicle mode or on top of the vehicle mode either. It'd be really cool if it could just fit like right up here and just be this giant cannon of death, but alas, it cannot. Oh well, let's go ahead and get into the transformations. We're going to start off with the plane because that, well, it transforms much, much easier than the other one does. And its transformation, you can kind of guess just by looking. Start off with, we folded up the landing gear, grab the front of the plane, pull it forward, and just kind of wiggle it off until it flips and snaps back, and then folds up to the top of the fuselage like that. Then come down to the rear of the plane and just start wiggling the wings apart, and they will fold down eventually, so we can pop the arms out from inside of them, which is a little bit more difficult than you might think. Come on. We can fold the arms up and out of the way, like that. Then come to what will be the robot chest just below where the cockpit was, or the front fuselage. Open it up and flip out a robot head, which is actually a little bit... It's not easy to do to get this robot head out of here. It actually is really quite difficult. Come on. There we go. Flip that out, fold it up, and then come down to the back of the vehicle mode again, unpeg the legs from the back of the plane mode, and then fold them down and snap into place, like so. Flip out the heels and the feet on both feet, like that. Turn the legs, or the bottom legs, around 180 degrees, and then take the wings and fold them down and into place. Making sure not to pinch your finger in the process. And they sit on the robot mode's thighs, and then fold the shoulders into place, like that. Put the head up. And then literally just start fiddling with all the kibble until you get everything in place and the figure can stand up on its own. One last bit of the transformation to be aware of is that the entire pink section pulls away from the figure, and it can turn 180 degrees. So you have an option. Either do this and have the robot head with this nice little halo, and then the front of the fuselage in the back, and then fold it up or fold it down as a third leg, or keep it with the fuselage folded up or down on the back. Your choice. Doesn't really matter, but I prefer to have the front of the cockpit mode down and use that as an extra stability point for the figure. In robot mode, the figure looks incredibly cool. The coloring is absolutely fantastic, but there are some odd proportion issues going on here, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I can't help but loving the overall look of the robot mode. It just works so well. And it looks more like a drone than something from, say, Transformers or Macross. And that's because of the face sculpt, which we'll take a quick close-up look here. But I can't argue with the overall aesthetic of it. It just works really well. The figure also comes with a neat little gun here, but the figure can't really hold it without a lot of force. I like the gun. I think it works, but it also doubles as a gun that turns into a little sword. Gun sword! Power Rangers, you need to steal this specific gun sword. Just because. I find swords that turn into guns and vice versa really, really funny and cool. Now, talking about the head sculpt, well, the sculpt of the head is really good. The little bunny ears also are posable a little bit, or I should say antenna are posable, but the face, or the lack thereof, is what bugs me. I would have loved to have had a more detailed face, but I can live with this, and maybe I'll send it off to a customizer to give the figure a cooler face. Now, due to the proportions of the robot mode and these giant wings hanging off the thighs, which are only very minimally posable, the figure does suffer from some posability problems, but not in the way that you might think. Yes, kibble gets in the way, but other bits get in the way as well. The entire backpack section gets in the way of the spikes on the shoulders. The shoulders themselves are on ball joints, but then the arms are very strange because they are screwed into these outer armor pieces. There is a swivel and an elbow, but you can't do anything with the arm straight. The only posability you get is if you turn the arm and the figure puts their forearm into their chest, like they're crossing their heart or something, or reaching over to the other arm. That is limited. There is also a swivel / ball joint, swivel. There is also a swivel in the hand. Unfortunately, as I said, the figure has a really hard time holding her weapon because the weapon handle is not really scaled correctly to the actual hand, but that's fixable. Legs are on a series of swivels and hinges. Figure can kick forward a bit, can kick back a bit, and can kick out. Swivel just above the knee, and there really isn't a knee bend because of the transformation, and feet do move back and forth. In terms of height, she is just a smidge bigger than a current Voyager-class Transformers figure. I love the look of this figure. I love the way the figure feels. I love the coloring. I just think that some of the choices in assembly were misguided, and let's face it, the thing with the arms just is a problem. Oh, and the head doesn't have a swivel on it at all. Improvements that I would make? Well, obviously, I would redesign the arms, give it a swivel here, maybe give the arms a little bit more posability and other options, or maybe make the armor a bit, maybe make it so that the armor on the outside of the arms goes up a little higher or collapses at the midway point up into the shoulder, something like that. That would add some posability and playability to the toy. Also, give the character a better face, because those tiny beady little eyes are very, very Bumblebee-esque. Now, I do love the fact that the chest here is translucent. That is a translucent purple. I love that effect. I would like to see that incorporated more along the figure. Overall, I like the figure. I honestly do. It's just got a few very, very bad shortcomings. Now, moving on to the transformation for our little tanky friend here. This transformation is a little bit different. It's it's very different from any other transforming figure I've ever seen before. We're going to start off with the front of the figure, split the front of the vehicle mode apart, and the gray inner parts are going to flip out to form the legs, which is really cool. I've never seen that before. Turn the figure upside down and then collapse the legs, or these pieces of the legs, in. And you kind of have to fiddle with things in order to get the legs angled correctly. I will admit this is the worst part of the robot mode, is just getting the legs set up correctly. And then once that's done, we can come in here and flip the feet out and extend the heels. Like that. Also, I would really like it if the legs would lock in a little better, but more on that later. Okay, now we have what can only be described as like a crab mode for the car. Coming up to the back of the figure, first take the wheels and unpeg them from the side panels, and then take these side panels and fold them back along the windows. And then you can see the arms there. The arms will then come in and they will fold down, but before we can do that, we have to get the top of the vehicle mode out of the way. So the top of the vehicle mode is going to come up, split apart, and then fold up and over the back of the vehicle mode. And it looks like it's not going to work. And quite honestly, I have had to just futz with the alt mode a bit and then kind of force the shoulder or the back of the vehicle mode, which becomes the shoulders, around, and then I can take the entire section and pull it up and over and pop the ball joint, because of course if there's a ball joint on a figure, I'm gonna pop it. Once those two bits are folded up behind the back, we can then first reach in and pull up the robot head, which just gotta get in there and make sure it doesn't get stuck on these two pylons. Yeah, come on. There we go. All right. And turn it around. Get these shoulders correct and flip up the little shoulder wings. And then we're done. The robot mode we end up with is really quite striking and very, very cool looking. I love the coloring, I love the molding, I love everything about the figure, except a few things which we'll get into in a little bit. The overall aesthetic is just so good. And you could tell it's a land-based vehicle mode. The robot mode is obviously feminine without looking like Windblade. Because let's face it, that super thin midsection with large hips and large bust just does not work for a car in this case. And, well, it didn't work so well for the plane either, did it? But this works incredibly well, and the coloring is just superb. And this head sculpt works much better than the Jet does. The head is just so much more expressive, and I think it's because the eyes are painted as opposed to being, little beady eyes. Plus the fact that the head is on a ball joint and can move around works incredibly well, but the ball joint is a little bit on the loose side, but not that bad. I really like the look of this figure. Besides the head being on a ball joint, the shoulders are on a ball joint, but are affected by the backpack. Then there is a swivel just underneath the... Then the elbow bends at almost 90 degrees, and there is some in and out movement, and there is a lot more movement at the shoulder itself. So there's the ball joint of the shoulder, a hinge at the shoulder, and then almost 90-degree bend at the elbow, and fists or hands do articulate on a swivel. Unfortunately, there is no swivel for the actual arm. No torso articulation, but the legs are on a series of hinges and ball joints, and but they kind of kick forward, so they don't truly kick forward. They kind of go up and out. The knees bend almost 90 degrees, and there is a little bit of foot articulation for the feet, and the figure can do the splits with no problem. However, because the hips don't lock into place at all, at least on my figure, then you run into a problem with the hips just moving about and wiggling about, and you do have to be quite careful. Also, the knees. The knees don't lock into place when they flip out, but you can sort of get them. And then we come down to the knees, and unfortunately they don't lock into place either, which is a shame because they do have a tendency to stick out on the side like that. You could get this kind of weird little crabby look going, which is stupid. I would have loved to have seen them be able to slide up into the upper thigh or slide down a little bit. That would have been nice, but they don't. And oh well, it would have been a nice to have. The figure also comes with that giant gun, but really can't wield it all that well. If it was a little smaller, maybe, but the handle is just way too big for the hands. I've been able to get it into the hand with quite a bit of force, but I'm really afraid I'm going to break the thumb off, so I just kind of leave it. Or you know, it would have been good if you could just peg it onto the side. That would have been fine. But the thing's just too big. It's just way too big. But the figure has no real problem holding on to anything that's 3.5 millimeters. So a gun from the Transformers can get in that hand with no real issues. So there is that. Oddly enough, these figures scale to about the same size that some of the other Masterpiece figures scale to. Here's MP10 Prime, but these two are roughly the same size as, say, Prowl or Wheeljack or Sideswipe, which is a good size given their price tag, which is only around 15 to 20 bucks a pop. I can't help but really like both of these figures. Yes, they're both flawed in their own ways, but they're both super unique. And they're a lot of fun. Both of the alt modes, once you get them to the alt modes, they're really, really cool. And then the robot modes are equally neat. Not the most posable in the world, but they're neat. And you know what? I've gotten a couple of figures lately that are mainstream figures that have less posability than these. Look, the uniqueness is what sells me on these. I don't think we've ever seen transformations like these, or even designs like these before. And I would love to see Takara take a Masterpiece shot at these, or even the folks that do Tobot, Young Toys, take a shot at these guys, because I think they could make a couple of improvements that would just make them better overall. They're definitely worth picking up, so if you guys can, head over to SirToys.com and pick them up. They're also both very on the cheap side, which is really nice because there's also die cast in these things. Like the wings down here are die cast, and there are different die cast pieces on this gal as well. They're heavy, they're chunky, they're a lot of fun, and totally worth adding to your collection. They're not perfect, but I like them anyway. So folks, let me know what you think of these ladies down in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button. Be sure to hit the bell. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm Baltmatrix, and I will catch you next time.